This is Dave McCain with the Right Tree Genealogy. I'm doing another video, a follow-up video on discover more on FTDNA. So let's go over to the login. This is my father's login. Put myself down in the corner. We go into my father's kit. Now I'm doing this as an admin information, but it's in my father's personal kit. I go into discover more. And once I get in there, it goes straight into, as it did before, into the haplo story. And notable connections, I'm really not seeing anything major there. Last time I discussed Johnny Cash and Tutankhamun being in the haplo group, the R haplo group. And my main focus on this video is going to be where the numbers are. And I focus on the scientific data just because I'm wanting to see how my estimates or my project, we want to see how those numbers are meeting to what we've seen before and how it meets to our project. And looking at this is my father and I's terminal SNP FTA 47557. The time to most recent common ancestor is 1908. And so my father was born in 1924 and this is 1908. However, it's plausible, since we haven't tested someone like his brother, one of them, to test, or one of his male siblings' children. So as of today, my father and I are the only two that have this. If it's in his father, that would be 1878, which this confidence interval would fit that. What did it look like before? Well, let's go back in time and take a quick look at that. So in August, when I produced my last video, it shows for that same SNP 1934, but the confidence interval still measured to his father. Go back to the haplo group and step back one more. And so, by the way, if you notice here, it shows that my father and I are the two testers in this area. And in this area, this is what we call the McCain SNP. And this particular SNP, the FT294408, we know that it was at least in the great-grandfather, since 3 of his children have tested and match here. So let's go to the scientific data here. If FT294408 started with my great-grandfather, he was born in 1832. This mean would be really close. And if it was formed in his father, my great-great-grandfather on the McCain line was born about 1800. There are 2 different sons of one individual. We haven't really determined which one it is because this was an MP event. But however, it's either between 1800 and 1815 between those 2 sons. So this still meets that. What was it before? Well, let's go back in time. Going back and looking at it, what it was 1878, which coincidentally was my grandfather's birth year, but this wasn't formed with him. We know it was formed in the previous one. So what we like about this one for us, the new one, the September update, actually has a better number than the August number had. Again, it's because of the number of testers we have in an area. Now let's step back another one. So again, this is all updates on it. Let's go to the scientific data. The scientific data shows 1658 as the mean, and the confidence interval is 1444 to 1807. Let's look at what it was. In August, that was 1739 with 1574 to 1855 for the FT 27669. And what makes this significant is this is closer to where we really expect this to be than what it was. We expect it to be between 1650 and 1700 to 1720. So this is better than what it was before. With our 70 testers we have, but particularly 14 people focused in this one area, these numbers make more sense to us. That's what this one is. Let's step up another one. I'm going to step through these. The next one is FT29222. We go to the scientific data. The scientific data says 1635 with this confidence interval here of 95%. Well, what was it? In August, that was 1713 with this confidence interval. Well, if you notice, there's virtually 100 years or 80 to 100 years difference than what it was. Their algorithm is being modified, and it's looking more like what we expect it to be based on the distance between our testers. We know that our testers at this point, we have the group of McCains. The next person up, we do know that he's not within 5 generations of our line, and therefore we know that these dates make sense to us. The next person up from that is a peer distance, but again would not be any closer than the 5th to 8th cousin, and therefore these numbers make sense because that match would not be any earlier than the 1700s. So when you look at the data that we've accumulated and go back to this screen, when this particular SNP was formed, we expect this to be between the 1635 and the 1700, which it does fall within the confidence interval. And again, that's with our testers and the data that we have. Now when we click back, so I'm going to click it back one more here, and we have a total of 7 testers in this area, and this is important. This is the beginning of where we see from this point backwards in time it's all Barton, and so we know that the name was originally, surname wise, was Barton. This says 1556. What was it in the previous update? Let's look at that. So in the previous update in August, this was 1653, and with this confidence interval here, we can note that this was getting a little too recent for when we expected this to form. So now when you look at the new data, that 15, we're expecting this one to be between 1550 and 1600, which would make sense for when this one was formed. And that's a better number. The more they refine their algorithm, the closer we think it's getting to the real number of the data that we know. Since this gets me from my terminal SNP up to the Barton line and my lineage 1 data, I'm going to say that it looks like Discover More is getting their algorithm better, and the more testers we have, the more refined this will get. It will never hit the exact birth dates. That's not how this works. That the mean is never going to be exactly. If it is, it's a coincidence, but the confidence interval should cover it. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing right here or watching one of these other videos. Let's continue learning together.